Yes. So the big focus for today is on creating a data portfolio, but I'm going to go a little bit beyond that and just talk about what are the important skills you need for different data roles, and then talk a little bit about, well, how do you go through just reading a job description to determine what should go into your data portfolio. All right. So first of all, let's talk about what data skills you need for different roles. Now, in any given organization, what you tend to find is that you have a few people who are experts and they need a lot of data and AI skills, and most people only need a few skills. So starting at the bottom of this pyramid, you have what we call DataCamp, data consumers. So these are people who don't need to create anything with data. They just need to be able to read reports that other people have created that involve some numbers or some plots or other forms of data. Or maybe they need to be able to interpret a dashboard, or maybe they need to be able to have a conversation with a data scientist, not sound stupid. So that's sort of a fairly entry-level set of data skills. And then the next level up for this is what we call citizen data practitioners. And this tends to mean people with some sort of analyst in their title. So it's often people who are embedded within a business function. So for example, you're in a marketing team, but you're working with data a bit. So you may be called a marketing analyst, maybe it's some other job title, but you're going to be in some sort of business team or other non-data team, but you have to use data in some way. Financial analysts are another good example of this, maybe product analysts, that sort of thing as well. The next level up from this is that there are some job titles with data in them. So at this point, you're a data practitioner, and the three most common job titles are going to be data analyst, data scientist, and data engineer, although there are other jobs as well. And at the very top level, you have some experts. So once you get into doing machine learning or working with AI, then it can become incredibly advanced. So let's get into a bit more detail about what the different skills you need are for these different roles. Before we get to that, though, I want to talk about is a nice comment I got from Vanessa Luzado Gonzalez. So I interviewed her for the Data Frame podcast. So I'm one of the hosts of Data Framed. And at the time, she was working at Transamerica. She's now Senior Director of Data Science at Business Solver. It's a data platform. And she was saying that because you have all these different ability levels within a company, that means that it can often be very hard for different people to communicate with each other at these sort of different technical levels. So if you can take technical language, technical results, and turn them into more everyday language for people who don't have that sort of technical jargon, then that is a pretty amazing skill. Sean, I think you need to mute yourself. You've got a bit of background noise there. All right, so let's get into some details about what skills you need if you're a data consumer. So remember, this is the sort of the entry level. I'm not a data professional, but I need to have some kind of understanding of data sort of role. All right, so these hexagons you can see here are DataCamp's data competency framework. So because we've had, I think, 12 million learners now go through our platform. So a lot based on feedback from these learners, plus scraping thousands of job adverts, plus talking to experts, we've kind of come up with, well, what are the skills needed by these different roles? And it sort of boils down to, I think we've got 21 hexagons here. So there's 21 different areas. Now, the way you interpret this, if it's gray, basically ignore it. These skills are not relevant for this role. So if it's a colored hexagon, then you can see you've got 3 bars in the top left. So three black bars means it's very important. 1 black bar means it's only, you know, it's sort of a few skills in this area. 2 bars is somewhere in between. So if you're a data consumer, then you can see the most important things here are that you need to be able to, first of all, interpret data. So if someone shows you a plot, you need to be able to look at it and go, okay, I understand what that's telling me. And secondly, you need to be able to make decisions based on the results of that. So rather than just going, okay, well, great, this metric is increasing over time, you need to be able to say, okay, well, this is what we have to do as part of the business as a consequence of that. And beyond that, one thing that's not really mentioned here is that having a really strong vocabulary around data is also incredibly helpful for communication. So just understanding what the jargon is going to help you communicate better and also make better decisions from data. All right, so I'm just going to take a swig of coffee, and then I'll tell you about citizen data practitioners. Okay, so at this level, you're expected to do some kind of analysis yourself. Maybe it doesn't have to be particularly fancy, but you're going to have to do some sort of a simple analysis. To begin with, the first point I made here is you need to do self-service analytics. So what that means is you are a bit self-sufficient. You're not going to have to run to a data team and say, okay, I need help with this. I'm just going to be able to go and crunch the numbers on my own. Secondly, you're probably going to be responsible for creating dashboards and reports. So that means you've got to be able to crunch some numbers yourself, draw some plots yourself, maybe make them a little bit interactive. And then beyond that, the final point is around data storytelling. So nobody likes to read a report where it's just a deluge of plots and numbers without any kind of coherence.
And she hasn't responded, but
got some sound coming from maybe Gregory. I'm not sure. If you can just mute yourself, please. So nobody likes to read a report where it's just a mass of results without any sort of structure to them. So data storytelling is about creating a narrative from your report, turning into a form that humans more easily understand. Because people like to read stories, they don't like to read 100-page reports full of numbers. Once you get to a data practitioner level, so once your job has data in the title, the skills that you need start to diverge a bit. So you can see this sort of building, there are more colored hexagons now for a data analyst. So this is a more advanced job as far as data goes. Now, one thing that is sort of universally true is that when you get a data set for some kind of data analysis project, the data will always start off being rubbish and completely inappropriate. So one thing you need to get very good at as a data analyst is being able to clean data sets and being able to manipulate them. So that means things like creating new columns, doing sorting, doing filtering, to massage your data into the right form. Maybe you need to convert it into a different shape. Maybe you need to change some values that weren't quite correct, that sort of thing. On top of that, you'll probably be expected to use a business intelligence platform. So whether that's like Power BI or Tableau or Click or Looker or one of like the other dozens of platforms. And finally, at this level, data storytelling is even more important. Just bear with me while I swig my coffee again. So with this, by this sort of level, as a data analyst, you would be expected, it would be expected that you can make sure any results you create from a report. So at the end of a project, you've written your report or you've done your presentation, it would have to link back to some kind of business objectives. Otherwise, people would be like, well, why have you done this analysis? We don't care. So data storytelling, incredibly important. And the data scientist role is kind of a superset of the data analyst skills. You need to be able to do basically everything a data analyst can do. But on top of that, you'll probably be expected to do a bit of machine learning or statistical modeling. I mean, basically, something like logistic regression it falls under both categories. Like there's a sort of a joke that machine learning scientists and statisticians write the same code just in a different order. So yeah, you got to be comfortable with all the kind of the common model types, linear and logistic regression. So all the decision tree variants like random forests, maybe have some casual acquaintance with neural networks, just general understanding of those common model types for classification and regression. Probably also unsupervised techniques like clustering as well. And the other thing about data scientists is that you will be expected to do some programming. So you can't just rely on these sort of point and click business intelligence tools. And thirdly, you're going to have some fairly strong statistics skills. You need to understand what a p-value is. Very common job interview question. And beyond that, you ought to be able to run sort of a common sort of tests, like understand what a t-test is. You probably be asked to do some, or you might, depending on which team you're in, you might be asked to do some kind of statistical experiment. So A/B tests are the most common type of statistical experiment. Data engineering is a slightly different beast. So data engineers are sort of halfway in between a data analyst and a software developer. So the whole goal of being a data engineer is to make sure that all the organization's data gets to the right people at the right time. So there's a lot of programming involved in this. Just like a data analyst, you're going to be doing a lot of data cleaning, data manipulation. But in many organizations now, there is just so much data moving so fast that there's no way to process this all manually. So just understanding how to go about automating tasks is incredibly important. Now, for the experts, I just want to talk a bit about machine learning engineers. So again, this is like, it's fairly close to the idea of a data scientist. You're going to be doing some machine learning, but then on top of that, you quite often need to be able to put some of the work that you've done into production. So maybe embed it into some software, put it on a website, get it in a place where it is user facing. And that's a whole different sort of set of skills. I'm going to break the questions in a moment. So please do ask them in the chat. Before I get to that, we did a very nice webinar with Kelly Palmer from the edtech company Degreed. And she was saying that for her, the most important skill you need to learn is learning agility. And so I'd say I've been working in data science for about 18, 19 years now. And the longer I do this, more I realize I know kind of nothing. Like on a good day, I know 1% of data science. And it's just reached the point where there is so much to learn. You could spend 10 lifetimes learning it and still not know everything. And so you can't just do a degree and be done. Like you can't even do a PhD and be like, okay, that's it. I'm not learning anything else again for the rest of my career. You have to take the attitude to be continuously learning, like throughout your whole career. You can never stop. All right. So before I get into tools, let's just take a quick look at the questions. All right. Okay. So question from Legacy. What does citizen mean here? Okay. Yeah. Citizen data practitioner. I don't know who originated the term. It's been around for a few years. It basically just means you don't have data, like you're not a data practitioner. It's not in your job title, but you're sort of doing this not quite for fun, like unofficially. Like it is your job, but you're not an official data person. You just, you work with data because you have to. I hope that answers the question. I have to say, I don't love that term, citizen data practitioner, but it seems to be becoming standard, so I'm not fighting it. All right. So next question comes from Zeus saying, are there any great papers on data cleaning, sort of the go-to for data cleaning methods? All right. So at DataCamp, I'm not sure about papers because it's one of those things where there are quite a few different ways data cleaning can go wrong. I think, well, the resource I want to recommend to you rather than any papers is that at DataCamp we have several courses on data cleaning. So we have data cleaning in Python and data cleaning in R. Those were courses that I was sort of involved in the creation of, and I was because I remember specking those out, and I went through very carefully. Like these are all the different possible common ways that data analysis data sets can be bad, and so it's very systematic about like the ways the things that can go wrong and what you need to do. So I'll post a link in the chat to those courses at the end. Miriam, can you remind me at the end to send a link? We also have courses on data cleaning in SQL, Power BI, Tableau as well. So pretty much whatever language you want, there is a DataCamp course for learning how to deal with that. All right. Next question. Also from Juice. What university or college degree do you require for these roles and what level? Yeah. So, I mean, when I started out in this field, the idea of a data science degree didn't exist. And so my background, my degree was in mathematics. I have a master's degree in environmental mathematics, and I've sort of drifted into data science as it formed. There are some now some university degrees that are specifically data science. Um, and it depends what you want to do. If you want to be um, I don't know, you want to work in marketing, quite often you can do a marketing degree and be able to take some technical data. Ooh. uh, so as I was saying, if you want to work in marketing, you can do a marketing degree and then maybe take a few technical courses. So at DataCamp, we also have professional certifications for data analysts, data scientists, and data engineers. So if you don't want to spend 3 years and however many tens of thousands of well dollars or whatever currency you want. Basically, degrees are very expensive. If you don't want to spend that much or that long, then a data camp qualification is also a possibility, at least to get you started. In combination with an undergraduate degree, that's often enough to convince employers. All right. So next question from Miriam saying, are group projects interesting to mention in a portfolio? I would say, yeah, absolutely. So at this point, pretty much all of like all data roles, all data science, it's a team sport. Most projects in the workplace involve more than one person. Quite often they'll involve multiple teams. The thing to be clear about is if you are using this group project as part of your portfolio, then you need to be transparent with your employer about like which bits of the project you did. So if you only made a very minor contribution to some project, then don't make out like you've done everything, because misleading employers up front is a terrible idea. Like probably the best case is they find you out and don't give you the job. Worst case is they don't find out and then they think you have skills you don't have. And then as soon as you start the job, you're failing because they're asking you to do stuff you can't do. Um, okay, so from Issa's asking, I've got a bachelor's degree in data science and AI. What would make me stand out on my CV? So I'll hang on to that question because I'm going to talk through a bit about matching your your portfolio um, to job descriptions, and I think some of that's going to be covered there. recommendation on Miriam's article on EDA. Yeah, definitely, definitely check that out. All right. And how can I find strong projects on which to be considered for the resume once I decide to apply for jobs? Okay, I'll cover that later as well. All right, so with that, I think I'm going to continue. I'll answer more questions later. For now, I'm going to continue on with the slides. All right, so I was just talking about skills. Now I'm going to talk very quickly about tools. I've just got the one slide on this. So these are the sort of the different levels where I was talking about skills on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, we've got some examples of tools. So if you're a data consumer, historically, you've been able to get an awful long way just by using spreadsheets. This last year, I've had ChatGPT to that. So if you're just a kind of casual user of data, then understanding spreadsheets and ChatGPT is gonna be fine. I mean, those two tools are probably worth learning regardless of your level of ability. I mean, because they are now so widespread. At the citizen data practitioner level, so this is really the sort of the business analyst level. So on the top row, you can see choose your business intelligence platform. There are quite a few. I've listed 4 of the most popular. I would say you also need to be able to use SQL. So most corporate data is going to live in a database. You need to be able to work with it there in the database. And beyond that, because these roles are typically, they're embedded in some sort of business function rather than being in a dedicated data team, you're going to have to use whatever tools that business function uses. So if you work in a sales team or a customer success team, then you're going to be using Salesforce or something similar. If you work in a product team, you're probably going to be using Heap or something similar. If you work in a marketing team, you're going to be using Marketo or HubSpot or something similar. Now, for data analysts and data scientists, the tool stack has actually got incredibly simple here. So you basically need Python and SQL and maybe R. Actually, I think I've accidentally deleted something here. So the other thing I was going to mention on this is that in terms of technology, you're probably going to do most of your work in Jupyter Notebook. And so I'm going to show you an example shortly of Workspace, which is DataCamp's hosted version of a Jupyter Notebooks designed to make it easy for you to create a portfolio. So if you are, if you're trying to create a portfolio, trying to show off your work, then I'm going to show you how to do that shortly. All right. So whereas the data analyst and data scientist tool stack is pretty simple, just these 3 programming languages, for data engineers, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of tools. So first thing on the top row, most companies have some sort of cloud data warehouse now. And the sort of the big ones, it's Amazon Redshift. If your company is based on the Amazon Web Services, AWS Cloud, you've got Google BigQuery. So if you're running on the Google Cloud, you're probably using BigQuery. And then you've got Snowflake and Databricks. These 2 are sort of independent of the different cloud providers. And then beyond that, so Git is a version control tool, so you can manage your code. Airflow is for scheduling code, so you decide when to run, and you can manage complex sequences of scripts. So if, for example, some of your code doesn't run, it's going to tell you, okay, don't run this other code because that'll be broken too. Spark, dbt, Fivetran, Kafka, these are all sort of tools for working with bigger data sets. and pushing data around the organization. Now, machine learning engineers, again, you're going to be using the same sort of Python SQL R setup as your data analysts and data scientists. Beyond that, you need tools for working with models in production. So you have tools for sort of managing models and experiments, so things like MLflow, weights and biases. And then beyond these, like DagSub, Kubeflow, SageMaker are all sort of end-to-end machine learning in production platforms. DVC is data version control. So again, this is a completely non-exhaustive list. There are dozens and dozens of these tools. I've just listed some of the most popular. All right. So next up, I want to give an example of how I think about creating a portfolio based on a job description. And this is my kind of flow. So I don't just read, like if I was going to apply for a job, it's been a while since I applied for an external job, but I've done a lot of it in my time. And just reading through from start to finish isn't necessarily the best flow for making use of a job description. If you try and decide, well, should I apply for this? And then how do I do a good application from it? So this is my workflow for it. It's a slightly different ordering. You start off, I mean, well, read the job title, just have a guess, what is this job about? Quite often from a job title, you go, no, this is a stupid job, not for me, move on. Because a lot of the time, I mean, there's so many jobs available on these job sites, you want to find the ones that are good as fast as possible. Secondly, I go, like, if I decide it's okay from the job title, click into it. I'm going to read the qualifications. And first of all, I'm going to check for deal breakers. If they're asking for skills where I'm like, okay, there is no way they will hire me because I don't have that skill. Okay, bin it, move on to the next one. If it does look reasonable, that's when I have to start thinking about, well, what are the skills are they asking for that I'm going to have to be able to demonstrate in a job interview? Next, I'm going to have a look at the responsibilities section of the job and say, okay, well, does this sound like something fun that I could do 40, 50 or more hours a week? And then I'm going to see, do I have experience that I can demonstrate, or what experience are they going to want me to ask to demonstrate for this role? And then finally, I read the job description. You think that would happen first, but usually job descriptions are full of waffle, so hard to work out what's going on there. But worth a read before you actually apply, just to see if there's any additional insight. And for that, you can make a plan to show off your skills. All right, so I just went on the Indeed website, picked a data analyst role, sort of not quite at random, but I thought, well, TikTok sounds interesting, so let's go and analyze one of their job descriptions. I also picked one in New York because in New York they're obliged to give you a salary range. So you can see this this data analyst role from TikTok is offering between $106,000 $160,000 a year. That's not a shabby salary. It's not going to let you retire quickly in New York, but it's a decent salary. Okay, so from this job description, right, well, we know it's from TikTok. So what does TikTok do? It basically sells adverts with videos to entice you to see those adverts. And so this job, it's a sales job because we see sales in the title. So it's going to be about selling advertising products. And then it's got some jargon in there. So what does SMB mean? SMB is small and medium businesses, like that's organizations with less than 500 employees. So that's who you're selling to. And then GTM means go to market. So go to market insights basically mean trying to figure out, we have this product and we need to work out how to sell it to someone. So does the product fit a particular audience, and is it packaged in a way that audiences will appreciate? So have we got a product that we can sell, basically? So it's kind of experimental selling. All right, so we've clicked through, we've gone to data analyst. Maybe that's good enough for us. So let's click into the job advert. Ooh. Ooh. And we'll start reading the qualifications. All right, so this is the list of qualifications. If you are particularly eagle-eyed, you'd notice that there are 9 things, but they have 2 number 8s. So reading through these, the first thing I like to do when I'm looking at qualifications is pull out which technology skills are they asking for. So reading through all this, you can see they ask for SQL, and this is on line number 3. So they ask for SQL for complex data. Bit fuzzy on what that means. They haven't worded it particularly clearly. I'm going to guess that means they want you to show off that you're comfortable with joining data from 2 different tables together. They might want you to be comfortable with something called common table expressions. That's for reusing queries and sort of building them up into longer queries. Basically, a common table expression is like the SQL equivalent of a variable that you'd have in Python or R. If any of these explanations are not making sense, then please do ask questions in the chat. All right. So next thing, they ask for Tableau, in particular data visualization with Tableau. They also ask for Python. And once I've gone through extracting all the different technology skills that they want, I'll then look through which soft skills do they mention. So they actually mentioned communication twice. So it's there in number 6 saying excellent verbal and written English communication skills. And then number 9 is excellent verbal and written communication skills. The fact they've mentioned that twice, almost certainly an error on their part, but I'm going to assume that they do really care about it. Beyond that, some other stuff that's mentioned is coaching and mentoring and storytelling. So as I'm kind of putting together a plan for like how I want to present myself, both on my resume, in the covering letter, in my portfolio, these are all things that I'd have to demonstrate. Next up, looking at the responsibilities. So again, there's like a lot of text here. Most of it's like blah, 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 blah. But I just pulled out a few interesting things here. So one thing they mention is that you're going to be interacting with other teams. In particular, they say sales, marketing, product engineering. So this is something that you could explicitly demonstrate that you've got prior experience of before. So anytime you've like, if you have some existing work experience, you can talk about how if you've worked in a sales team or if you've worked alongside a sales team. Same for the other categories, marketing, product engineering. You want to be able to just talk about, hey, this is a thing I've done before for any cases where that's true. Obviously, don't make up situations where you've spoken to an engineering team if you haven't. The other thing, it just explicitly say that you're going to be creating reports, dashboards, and metrics. So this is something you want to be able to talk about having done before, if it's true. And it also means that this gives you some guidance on like what you need to create for your portfolio. You're going to have an example of a report and an example of a dashboard. And finally, it's saying understanding business challenges. So talking about a time where you solved a business problem is going to go down well. The other thing to do, as I mentioned with the responsibilities, you want to decide, is this going to be fun? If you're going to be spending 5 days a week doing this, you want to make sure that this is something you enjoy. If you're like, well, I hate speaking to other people, I really don't want to have to like chit chat with salespeople a lot of the time, then, this job is not for you. At this point, you close the advert, move on to the next one. All right. So next up, I'm going to go through the job description. This is quite long, so I've split it down into 2 slides. And again, job descriptions, I find them awfully waffly a lot of the time. So I've highlighted a few key phrases. It's full of jargon. So I've tried to convert this into what it actually means for you. So there's that phrase saying designing scaled sales and service delivery programs. I'm not entirely sure what it means, but the word scale jumped out at me. Anytime you see something about scaling, that means there's going to have to be some automation involved because you just can't make humans work faster than they can work. So you need to have some kind of programming skills here. You need to be confident in just saying, okay, this is where we replace a human with a machine. Secondly, it's saying customers have best-in-class tools. So it sounds like this job description is saying the work you're going to do is going to be available to the customers, not just internally. And so that means that your work will go into production. And once your work goes into a bit of software, that means you need to be able to show that you can write tests for your code to make sure it's correct, and do things like defensive programming techniques. So, for example, in Python, there's a thing called assert statements that say, okay, if something's gone wrong, then throw an error. So basically, error handling is the more general term for this. So yeah, you're going to have to be able to write high quality code, basically. And then customer-centric mindset, that's basically just like you need to find some excuse to talk about a time when you've helped a customer. And I want to say this last point is something that's incredibly common for pretty much every job. Like every company, whether it's true or not, likes to talk about being customer-centric or customer-facing. Like, yeah, every company wants to say that like they really, really, really care about their customers. And so talking about this is going to be a good thing for any job interview you go to. All right, so next paragraph of the job description, a few more phrases jumped out at me. So there's a bit about you're going to be doing projects from start to finish. That sounds like basically they want you to be able to take ownership of the project and have a bit of self-sufficiency. So it shouldn't have to be your manager is telling you what to do every day. It's going to be a case of the manager says, okay, go and do this. And then you go and do it and report back to them. The next thing is a bit of a long one, but saying they want you to develop insights that can help us understand the effectiveness of our sales teams and services. So the point here is that any data analysis you do has to lead back to a business benefit. Don't just go crunching numbers, analyzing things just for the sake of data analysis. Because, sometimes we're data people, we think that analyzing data is fun. We get carried away. We, draw some plots that didn't actually have any value. And yeah, this is one of those cultural things where quite often commercial teams, like I find this a lot with sales teams, is like they will humor data people, but not everyone is going to care unless they can see how it's going to, help them hit their targets, help them make more money. All right. What's next? So yeah, this one about SMB, business metrics, data structures, and analytical frameworks. It means if you get offered a job interview, you're probably going to have to go back and do some background research on what some sort of useful business metrics might be, because that's the kind of thing they might slip into an interview question. Say, well, oh, how would you measure the success of this? And just having that jargon to know what are the most important metrics in this case. Finally, there was a thing about partner cross-functionally. Again, that's about you need to work with other teams. So I think it mentioned on the previous slide, you're going to have to be working with sales, marketing, all the others. So if you've got any examples of when you've spoken to people on commercial teams, that would be helpful. So hopefully, with all that, you're now ready to form a plan. This is how I'm going to apply for the job. So first of all, it said you need to create a report and a dashboard and then think of some experience. So we start off with creating a report. I'm going to go into an example report in a moment. So it's a sales job, but there are also some products in there. So you want a sales or a product sort of data set. You need to show off that you've got SQL skills and can do joins. So something involving those. And then you also need to include some business metrics, data viz, and business insights, because that was what the job description asked for. Maybe show some data cleaning or data quality work if it's appropriate. You also probably need to create a Tableau dashboard on something similar, same sort of focus. I am not going to do that because I'm not a Tableau person and because it'd be kind of covering similar ground. And then we also pulled out some examples of things that you need to think about to provide experience for. So this is some stuff that you can talk about maybe in the covering letter, might be something you can sort of hint towards in your resume. It's not something that's necessarily going to be in a portfolio, but you probably want to tee up the interviewer. So when someone's going to interview you, they're probably going to ask you questions about, oh, well, is there a time you've helped customers? You need to be prepared to answer in an interview, and you might want to kind of hint at a time you've done this within your resume. All right, so I am going to take a slight digression. I'm going to leave the slides, and I'm going to go into an example workspace in a moment. But before I get to that, I just got a slide on how a portfolio is used in the interview process. So interviewing's a weird thing, or hiring's a weird thing, because like sometimes you put a job advert out there, no one applies, weird economic conditions. Other times you put a job advert out there, hundreds of people apply. And in particular in that second case, what you find is you've got lots and lots of resumes to sift through. And some of them look kind of fine. Some of them look maybe not so fine. And it's very difficult to tell quickly and get an accurate sense of like, is this person going to be a good fit from the job? There's not quite enough information there. And that's why you end up having to do all these extra rounds of like interviews and things. And everything gets very time consuming. And then you don't have any time because that's the reason you're hiring for someone. You're hiring someone new because, you're short staffed. So the hirer's mentality is often, I want to determine who is suitable for this job as quickly as possible. And because interviews they're slightly biased towards people who are good at talking about themselves. And so this provides a sort of not a slightly more independent way of judging, do these people have skills or not? So it's basically just a level of guarantee that you've got some of the skills you claim in your resume. Now, I'm not currently a hiring manager, but I have been in the past. And basically, when someone's shown me their portfolio, I have spent less than 5 minutes looking at stuff. It's just going to be a quick sanity check to be like, can this person actually write some Python code? Can this person actually draw some plots? Can this person actually link back their analysis to a business outcome? So if you put in your PhD thesis in there, 100-page analysis, good for you, but the hiring manager is not going to spend more than 5 minutes reading it. They're probably not going to spend more than a minute reading it. They might ask you about it in the interview. So having bite-sized content that makes it really easy for them to see what skills you have is incredibly important. All right. Before we do Q&A, let me dive over to this analysis of avocado sales in SQL and Python. I'm just going to create a copy link and share this in the chat view if you want to open your own copy. You can do a free registration on DataCamp for this. You don't need the paid version. But if you are building a portfolio, then this is something you want to get to. Actually, before I go through this, let me have a look at and see which questions I have missed. All right. So Ethan saying, will AI affect data analysis or data science in the future? Short answer is yes. Yes, a lot. Maybe we'll come back to that in more detail later on. Okay. Miriam's asking, how do you decide on the deal breakers? Since most recruiters ask for so many things, it's possible to track. Should we get to 80% of the qualifications, 90%? Oh, that is an excellent question. So basically, um, if something's like asking for a degree and you don't have that, then yeah, that's probably going to be a deal breaker because it's a huge thing. You can't sort of fake that. Although, in honesty, most job descriptions are going to say a degree or equivalent experience. Hopefully, if the job description is well written, it should be clear which skills they think are compulsory and which ones are nice to have. And beyond that, um, hopefully it's clear on the level of seniority. So that tends to be the biggest um, deal breaker is if you're trying to go for a job where it's just, many years more experience required. I think the trick is to try and imagine what the job is going to be. I think like that process I stepped through, um, I mean, I spent a good sort of 10 minutes thinking about what did the job description actually mean. And by that point, if you don't really understand the job, then it might not be right for you. And also, like by that point, you should hopefully have got a sense of like, is this something I could imagine myself doing? And if you believe that it's a job you could do, then yeah, go ahead and apply. Um, if you're missing a few things on the sort of on the list, then yeah, it's going to be a long shot. So it depends how good you are at blagging and how willing you are to learn a lot of new skills very quickly. All right. Can we get a copy of the PowerPoint? Yes, you can. Ding, ding, ding. And how do you get your first job as a data scientist when you were a fresher? Okay, yeah. So first job, internships are very good. A lot of companies or a lot of organizations do hire straight out of university. So I think companies that are just getting started in their data capabilities will be much more amenable to you like having some kind of data skills. Like there's a lot of places where, everyone just uses spreadsheets and, you got some Python skills. It's like, oh man, this is amazing. What a genius. So um, if you are, yeah, there are some places that are just like less competitive to getting that first bit of experience. My first data job was in a government organization. And so um, I was doing some very cool work, but I feel like the entry level for that is was not as strict as like going like if you want to get a job at OpenAI now or something like that, they're requiring PhDs just to get you started. Um, so yeah, pick an area where it's realistic about like, am I going to be able to succeed in my first role? Beyond that, I would say some companies do have pretty strong graduate training programs. Like I know a lot of the financial consultancies and things, what they call Deloitte and Accenture and PwC, all those, they're very strong. Like they recruit heavily out of university. All right. Ding ding. So quarter to two. Okay. Yeah, I'll do a couple more questions, then I'm going to the workspace. So Cameron's asking to say, if I ignore all the deal breakers, uh, what are the like worst possible consequences? Okay, so if you apply for a job which you are not qualified, almost always what will happen is you've just wasted like how many minutes of your time because you've sent out an application, the hiring manager's gone, nope, they've tossed it in the bin, and you've wasted like 10 seconds of their time. Um, so yeah, usually it's just a waste of time. You might get as far as a first interview, and then they'll go, nope, and you've wasted a bit more time. If by some miracle you get through all this and you actually get the job, Um, usually, like these days, most companies will have like a 3 month or 6 month probationary period. So you'll have a performance review after that period, and you'll probably have failed your performance review because you've just lied to them about this, about your skills. And so they'll get rid of you within the first few months. And again, you'll have been paid a little bit, but um, it'll have been a life experience, I guess. If you make it through all that and you've actually succeeded, then well done to you. All right. Okay, one more from Vanch, and then I'm moving on. All right. As someone who's been a hiring manager, do you think someone who has a more aptly catered and specific resume syncing with the requirements of the job description, maybe in them before and potentially preferred over a candidate with more experience and a more general resume? Yeah. So yes, tailoring your resume to a particular job description can give you a slight competitive advantage compared to just having throwing in a generic resume. So yeah, the important thing, the whole point of sending in your resume is to demonstrate that you have all the skills that, well, between the resume and the covering letter, you want to just give the hiring manager confidence that you have the skills needed to do the job, like what they asked for in the job description. So just you just want to go through the job description and tick off on your resume where you've shown that you have that particular skill. Um, and if there is something missing, then you write in an explanation in the covering letter. All right, I'll come back to future questions later on. In the meantime, I want to talk you through this uh this portfolio example. So this is a DataCamp workspace. It's a fancy Jupyter notebook, and then there's a file browser. So we've got a data set in here. So this is avocado, Hass avocado, no less, data. So it's a CSV file. I included um, uh, a notebook just showing how I clean the data, but this is something that will bore the hiring manager to tears, which is why I've kept it separate. And then in the main notebook, what I've focused on is, well, let's go through this step by step. First of all, the title. It explains it's got sales in the title. So I picked a sales data set, and it mentions the technologies I've used up front. So there's making really clear, oh, I can use SQL, I can use Python, and I know what to do with sales data. A bit of background information. And right up front, what I've done is I've listed some of the skills that I've used in this in bold, so they can go, oh yeah, this person has these skills. In less than like 5 seconds, they can see I can use SQL, Python, understand sales, and then have all these other things like visualization, data manipulation, answering business questions that were asked in the job interview. Brilliant. Done a lot of work for them in just a few seconds, and then just gone into a bit more detail on Python packages, because occasionally companies care about like which packages have you used. And then I go through the analysis. So actually, even though this is SQL, so Workspace has a cool thing where you can write SQL against CSV files. So rather than having to set up your own database and then pull in data from there, which is total pain, you can just is like upload a file from your machine, CSV file, and then you can write SQL code against it. So this makes it a lot easier to be able to write your own analyses if you want to show off your SQL skills. All right, so this is just getting all the sort of the data out of it, so you can have a look what's available. And the next thing I like to do is in a portfolio piece like this, or in a lot of data analysis reports in general, if you name each section what the business problem you're answering is, that makes it really easy for business readers to be like, oh, yeah, this is why I'm reading it, because I want to be able to answer this question. It's not just, oh, here is an analysis, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so talking about what we're calculating, just very bit of background context, showing off some SQL here, showing that I can write code comments. And this is an example of like pretty simple SQL, and then showing the output. And we got some numbers. Now, just showing these numbers, well, that's fine. But then the whole point was we need to be able to link it back to a business outcome. So here we have a description of the results. So this flow is pretty simple. A line or two of context, bit of code and some output, and then a line just describing what the results mean. Again, the important words are highlighted in bold because no one likes to read whole sentences when they're in a rush. And so bolding things makes it easier. Switch to Python now for drawing plots because, can't draw plots in SQL. And so I've got a nice Plotly Express plot. And yeah, again, the flow sort of repeats here. We've got a business question as the section title, bit of background context, bit of SQL code, and then some results, and then the plot. And I've just done the same for a few of these. I've got, I think, four questions answered here. What was it, 4 or 5? Yeah, 5 questions. That's about as much as any sort of hiring manager is going to look at. One thing I'll say, I did choose the plots very specifically. So it turns out there are 2 kinds of plots that are most used in business. That's line plots and bar plots. So if you're applying for some kind of commercial team role, like the sales example here, you want to be able to show off that you can draw bar plots and also draw line plots. In this case, it's a slightly fancy one because it's got different facets and multiple lines in there. I think that's pretty good to show off that you can do that. So those are the 2 most important plot types. Make sure you include both of those somewhere in your portfolio. And I think that's about all I had to say for this. If you want to learn more about Workspace, I'm happy to talk you through that. We also use Workspace in all the code alongs I run. So there's usually Tuesdays at DataCamp. So if you go to datacamp.com/webinars, I can see you in one of those sessions. I'm going to stop sharing now. Let's have a look again in the chat. I see we've only got 5 minutes, but any more questions that you want to ask me, then please do. Okay. All right. So, ding-a-ding-a-ding. What was the next question that I did not speak to? I think this comes from Amir. So, is domain expertise important very much for freshers, like we're working on our skills in programming analysis? What's the solution here for not having domain expertise? I'm sure you have expertise in some kind of domains. Like, I'm sure you don't just live in a world of code and nothing else. So one thing that I think people often underestimate is the joy of or the importance of minimum wage jobs. Like early in my career, I had a lot of jobs into factories, in working in catering, working in call centers, like logistics. basically anything customer facing is really amazing. If you worked in a shop or something like that, or you worked on like call centers, like these are brilliant things because you do get like experience of customer interaction. Um, Beyond that, yeah, maybe you need to take like a class in like some of the commercial side of things. You know, go and take a class on marketing or something like that. You don't need to be an expert, but you need to have a story about how you at least care about this stuff and or maybe can develop skills in that area. All right. So next thing, how to get a job when you're 35 plus and trying to change your career. Yeah. I was great. Well, I don't. It depends a bit on like the culture. I don't think in most countries that's a big deal anymore. Like, you know, people change careers. If it's a completely radical shift, you might expect that you're gonna have to drop a seniority level or two. But again, if you've got some skills, if you can blag it, then you know, who knows. If you want to have more details in the chat of like how you want to change your career, then yeah, let me know. Maybe I can give a more precise answer. All right. Next question comes from Guillermo saying, is it feasible to break into machine learning and engineering with a postgrad in AI machine learning, or do we need to start lower as a data analyst? Go up the ladder. Our background's environmental engineering with a boot camp in data analysis. Um, so machine learning engineering is a weird one because quite often that means you're going to be pushing code like into production. So there's a certain amount of trust needed that you can write really good code. I would say um, you're probably going to end up like for a machine learning engineering job, you're probably going to need that like PhD if you want to dive straight into it from university. Otherwise, yeah, you're probably going to have to do like a data analyst or data scientist role, see where you can get some machine learning projects. I have heard of people coming into it from like a software engineering background as well. Um, I'm not quite sure what environmental engineering involves. Like if you've been building dams like a beaver or something. Yeah. I don't know exactly how that career switch works, but yeah, it might be a tough one to go directly there. Good luck though. All right. So Miriam says, is it okay to mention projects in the CV if we're just starting up, don't have any work experience? It's especially important to mention projects then because you got bulk out your CV with something and just being able to say, I've been self-motivated enough to go and do this analysis by myself on my own time. Yeah. And this is how I can demonstrate my skills. Definitely important to do that. Cameron says that gave me a lot of confidence. Thank you. I'm glad this is useful. All right. Anyone else? Okay. What? Oh, someone asked, what does it take to become my mentee? I am not taking on individual mentees at the moment. I'm struggling to find time to do everything at once. But if you do want any advice, as I mentioned, so I run the webinars at datacamp.com/webinars. So we do quite often have career advice in those webinars. So if you if want to ask me something, please do show up to one of those, and then you can ask me questions in the session. All right. Sean asks, how do you best demonstrate your portfolio to the hiring manager? A link in resume or some other way to share it. So I quite often, yeah, you can have a link from your resume or from the covering letter. So if it's something like you've done particularly tailored to that role, you can say inside your covering letter, you say, well, actually, I have these skills. And as I demonstrate in this particular analysis link, you'll see I can do this. All right. Cameron asks, realistically, how much of an effect would cool looking plots have on my portfolio? So you're probably going to want to go for, can I demonstrate that I can do something useful that has an insight associated with it that the hiring manager can understand in under 5 seconds. So something that's like horrendous, like, I don't know, horrendously complicated is probably it. They're not going to look at it and understand it in real time. They might ask you about it and ask you to explain it in an interview. Sometimes if you get like a first or second stage interview, they can ask you about the work you've done, and then they'll say, "Oh, I saw you drawing this cool plot. Can you explain it?" If you've done something super that looks super cool but is meaningless, you're gonna you're gonna be onto a loser there. If you've done something that looks super cool and actually has a meaning or has some kind of insight, then yes, that'll go down very well. All right. Next question is from Gregory. Gregory says 100% would transition to a junior data scientist or machine learning engineer role. My thought is to stick with my healthcare background and focus on jobs in those domains, but my current role is 0% programming, so a switch is going to be based on projects for the most part. Yeah, so I think there are quite a few healthcare data roles which don't require vast amounts of programming. So just being able to show off some skills, you got a bit of Python and SQL, that's going to be enough. All right. Mary asks, I'm starting up learning to land a junior machine learning engineer job. Can you suggest the top 3 things I should focus on learning and mastering first? Okay, so DataCamp does have a machine learning career track. Let me try and find that. So one thing about like machine learning is, hang on, we have a tutorial. That's probably a good thing to. Since a few people have asked about machine learning engineering, there you go. There's a handy tutorial. All right, so a few people have asked about machine learning engineers. So it's a pretty advanced role. Whenever we teach this, well, you need to be really good at working with scikit-learn or PyCaret or maybe both. These kind of standard machine learning frameworks. Probably these days you also need a deep learning framework, of which PyTorch is currently the most popular, and Keras is also the kind of the number 2 player. So you need to be good at those. But before you can actually get good at those, you also need to get good at some of the data manipulation sort of fundamentals. You need to get good at things like messing about data and pandas, doing all that sort of data cleaning stuff. And if you're just getting started out learning, I would suggest like the thing that has the highest value that takes the least time to learn is getting really good at data visualization. So always start there. Master your data visualizations, then data manipulation, and then you move on to then get serious about machine learning stuff from there. And then it's lots of scikit-learn and the other frameworks. All right. I've realized we've run out of time. Miriam, are we okay to continue for a minute? I think it's only.
Yeah, I think if you have the time, I think it's really being very valuable to everyone. And so they just keep coming. Please.
Okay. All right. We spend 5 more minutes and then probably have to wrap up. Yeah. All right. Okay. So Leon asks, are there any platforms you find best to apply for data positions? Always like job platforms. I think data positions are so spread out. Like most of the mainstream platforms are going to have some kind of data roles on them. I'm not sure it varies from country to country, but yeah. start with the big ones like Indeed and take it from there. If anyone has any suggestions, well, let's crowdsource this and put your favorite job sites in the chat. All right. Ding, ding, ding. So, okay, Raheem asks, do different regions, Europe, Americas, Asia, around the world, greatly influence your career growth of data scientist to data analyst? Okay, so I moved from England to the US just because there are, you get more money basically in this country. Yeah, so I would say for entry level positions, people aren't going to sponsor your visa. Once you get a bit more senior, you've got some experience under your belt, and quite often companies will they'll sponsor you to move halfway around the world to take a job. So focus on getting those first few years of experience, and then if you want to go around the world and tour around, then go for it. Obviously, it's very rewarding living life in a different country. You get the sort of cultural benefit of not understanding anything. All right. Okay. Mary says, don't you think engineering is the most important thing for a machine learning engineering role? Yeah, it's a funny term. Software engineering is definitely a very important part of machine learning engineering. All right. I think I'm kind of out of questions now. Oh, one last one. What would a Jupyter notebook look like? That if you look as an interviewer, you immediately decide not to give the interviewer a chance. So I have like a fairly substantial amount of like software development experience. So I've got to the point where I can look at code and go, yeah, that looks a bit sketchy. I wouldn't write that code that way myself. So I can usually fairly quickly go, okay, I don't like this person's code. I think they'd need help in creating that. Or I don't think they could do the job entirely. So that's one thing that I would say be a deal breaker for me would be bad code. Beyond that, I think something that even less technical interviewers can spot is if you can't write a coherent sentence. So it has to be a spell check, grammar check, and does this actually create a coherent narrative? If something looks ugly, then I'll be okay. Out next. All right. I think we have to call it a day on that because we are well over time. But thank you for everyone for coming along today. I hope it's been informative. Yeah, and have fun in future sessions.